Hi. Sorry, we had a little bit of technical difficulty here. I had to reboot my computer. Hope everybody's here and can hear me okay. So what we're going to cover in this webinar is going to be the setup sheets in BobCAD-CAM version 26. So here's what we're going to do is we're going to start off by creating a real simple part, and then we're going to go ahead and look at the setup sheets as well as how to customize them. Okay, so what we're going to do is start here with a rectangle. I'm going to go to Other Than Rectangle, and we're going to start with a 5 by 5 rectangle, and we'll press OK. Now what we'll do is we'll just get some profile toolpaths on here. We'll come to the CAM tree, right-click our CAM defaults, and go to New Job. Now the CAM tree might look a little bit different to you if you've used older versions of BobCAD. In version 26 recently here, we've actually cleaned up the job tree a little bit. We'll launch our stock wizard. We'll go to rectangular, and we'll choose OK. Now I'm just going to come in here and go to our machine setup. We'll go to our Mill2 access. And then we'll select our geometry, which is just going to be this rectangle that we just drew. Confirm that, and we'll come down to our machining strategy. I'm just going to leave a profile rough and a profile finish. And we'll use two separate tools. I'll use a 1/4 inch for the rough and an 1/8 inch for the finish, just so that we have some or multiple tools showing up in our job setup sheet. We'll compute this toolpath, and you can see here in green, if I hide this stock, the green lines are the toolpath. Now, the purpose of this webinar is to really take a look at the setup sheets and what they can do and how they work and how you can customize them. What we will do is we will give you some resources as well. After this webinar is completed, I'll go back up on YouTube and add some comments with some resources or additional resources on how you can edit these setup sheets and how you can learn more about them. Now, to access the setup sheets, what we do is we come here to our milling job and right-click. And it's actually underneath Post. You'll see here we have Generate Setup Sheet and Generate Setup Sheet and Save As. Now, the Generate Setup Sheet just launches the setup sheet right inside of your web browser or Internet Explorer. So we'll go ahead and click on Generate Setup Sheet. Now, you get several choices. There's a drop-down of templates that load when you generate a setup sheet. Defaulted with the software comes a full setup sheet, which is every piece of information that's available after posting in the setup sheets. Then there's also a simple mill setup sheet, as well as a tool list. Let's go ahead and first take a look at the full setup sheet. We'll go ahead and click OK. And you'll see it'll just bring up my Internet Explorer. And you can see it, there's a logo up here, as well as there's also some information about the file. We have the file name, which post processor was used, the program information, our cutting distance, our stock sizes, the material that was used. Each tool that's used in the job will also be listed at the top. You can see here we use that 1/4 inch end mill that we had called out, and then an 1/8 inch to finish. Any comments that you enter into the BobCAD-CAM system will carry over into here. As well as operation data also populates. You can see here, here's our rough profile, which is one of the operations, and then a finish profile, which is another one of the operations. It gives a cycle time for each, as well as all the data about that operation, what our total depth is. This will help you set up your tool, so you know how far the tool needs to stick out of the holder. So there's a lot of good information here. Now, these setup sheets can be fully customized. Say if you want to show your company logo, or maybe you only want to show, you don't want to show the stock data, just the tooling information, or maybe you don't want to show the program data because somebody may change this. Let's take a look at this. Now, firstly though, now you'll probably want to hand this off to somebody. There's really two different ways to do this. If you want to give it to somebody else or your machine operator, or bring it out to the machine, the first way is to print. Now, since we're using Internet Explorer, You can see there's really no print button here. There's a little trick to get to that. What you want to do is press on your keyboard, press the Control key and P, and that's going to launch the print option within Internet Explorer. So you'll see that the sheets that we've customized, they're fairly narrow. They don't take up the whole screen. We did that intentionally so that they'd fit on the paper when you print it. So you could just choose your printer and go ahead and print, and this option will print out the setup sheet. Now, another thing that you may want to do is create a PDF out of this. Now, right out of Windows, you can't just create a PDF. This is one of those things where I said at the end I'll give everybody a link as a comment up on the video. This cute PDF writer is a free resource. What it allows you to do is print to a PDF file. So let's just go ahead and do that. Let's say I want to email this to someone. I might use this cute PDF. There's plenty of other third-party printers that create PDF files that you can use. And we'll just give this a name. And in this case, I'll save it to my desktop. Okay, now what we're going to do is browse to our desktop. And I could see here is my BobCAD setup sheet PDF that we had made. Now, depending on your printer settings is going to change whether or not if it prints landscape or portrait. In this case, I could see it printed portrait. So that's something that you may want to change. But that's one way to get a setup sheet that's then portable or printable, as well as you could print directly to the printer. Now, the other way to do this is from within BobCAD. When you right-click your milling job, you could choose to generate setup sheet and save as. Let's say we take that same full setup sheet and we'll save it. We'll click OK. And again, it's going to ask us for a location to save this to. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and choose my desktop again. And I'm going to call this sample part 1. And we'll choose save. And it again launches the browser, but it also saved the folder that contains this file that's shown in the browser. You'll notice that the file is an XML file. And what that XML file is it's basically a list. It's almost like a spreadsheet, but it's a list of all the data that BobCAD generated. And then there's a couple other files that generate what this sheet looks like and calls out the template, such as the image up here, and chooses what items out of that XML file actually show up here on the screen. Let's go ahead and close this. Let's take a look at that folder that was created on the desktop. Here's our sample part 1 folder. So you can see there's the sample part 1.xml file. And if we want to view that, if we just double click on it, Internet Explorer will open it. Let's close that. Let's look at the actual content of that file. Now, if you want to customize this, what you'll be doing is editing a few files using a Notepad editor or any sort of text editor. Now, I downloaded and installed Notepad Plus. That's my preferred editor. You can also use Windows Notepad if you don't have anything loaded. Now, to open a file like this, what you want to do is right-click on it and choose Open With, and then you could choose an application like Word or Notepad or WordPad. In this case, I'm going to go to Edit with Notepad. Now, in here, this is the XML file. The XML file just calls out a whole bunch of information, or BobCAD writes this file when you post the code or generate the setup sheet. This file contains the data like the units, the program number, the number of operations that are used in the program, number of setups or machine setups, the total time for the program. Here I can see that whole program is 3 minutes 4 seconds. based on the feed speeds and material and cut length. And then I have all the tooling information and so on. This file can get very long, but what the setup sheet does is it kind of organizes all this data. All these tags that you see, like post name, these are used to display what shows on that setup sheet. Let's go ahead and take another look at that folder there. So this is the file that was generated by BobCAD, the XML file. Inside here we also have our style sheets that change what shows on that XML file and changes things like the fonts, the colors, and the images. And then we also have an images folder that shows those images. So when you choose from BobCAD to generate setup sheet and save as, it generates an entire folder. That folder takes a copy of the template folder that you have within BobCAD, copies the template over, and generates the XML file, and puts it into a self-contained folder that contains all the data needed. So if you were going to email this to a person, they would need the entire folder, or again, you can do like we had done before and just generate a PDF and send it to that person, or print it. Now, the templates that come up, are actually folders themselves. Let's take a look at the directory for the templates to see how we can add a new template to this list. The template folders are contained in the BobCAD-CAM directory. So what you want to do is go to your local hard disk or your C drive, then BobCAD-CAM data, and then BobCAD-CAM version 26. Inside of the data folder for BobCAD 26, there's a setup sheets folder, and then templates. Now notice here, full setup sheet, mill setup sheet simple, the same items that we had in that list in the drop-down. Now if you want to add your own template or modify one that already exists, what the easiest thing to do is just to go ahead and copy one of these files, or one of these folders I should say. So we'll right click on this on a full setup sheet, go to copy, and then we'll paste a new one. It's always recommended either way that you work with a copy and don't destroy the original or change the original, so you have something to go back to as a reference in case if you make a mistake or an error. Now we can give this folder any name that we want. I'm going to right click and rename this folder, and we're going to call this BobCAD Setup. Now notice when we come back to BobCAD and we go to generate the setup sheet, we'll right click on our milling job and go to generate setup sheet. Notice in the drop down now I have BobCAD setup sheet. And something else to notice is also that these are listed alphabetically. So maybe if you want one of your tool lists to come up first, you may want to put, it would be an alphanumeric list, so maybe you want to put 1 setup sheet, or 1 mill tool list, 2 BobCAD setup, or 3 full setup. That'll control the order that they pop up in the drop down. But now let's look at this BobCAD setup sheet. We'll go ahead and choose OK to generate. It's the same exact setup sheet. So let's go ahead and look at how to modify this. Let's say for whatever reason we don't want to show the stock data in here. We just want to show the tooling and the operation data, so we just want to remove this stock. We'll go ahead and close this. Let's take a look at the contents of that folder. So the BobCAD setup folder that we had just made, we'll double click this, and inside of this folder you'll see that there's a setup sheet.xml. The setup sheets that are inside the template folder are just generic. They're not the ones that you generated using BobCAD. There's a copy in here so for modifications. So if we come in and open this up, you'll notice that this isn't even the program that well, this one is. This is the program that we had created. But these XML files can be used or displayed so you don't have to keep going back and forth to BobCAD when making edits to this. Let's take a look at, in here we have our style sheets. Now the XML has no information in it that shows the web browser how to display the information or what information to display. All of the information is present in the XML file. What gets displayed is based off of the template file that we're using, which you'll see right here is the bcss_format.xsl. So this is the file that is controlling what gets displayed from here. So we'll go ahead and minimize this, and let's take a look at that file. That's under our style sheets inside of our template folder. Now, these XSL files and XML files are very standard language. One thing that's nice about them is that they can be used to integrate the information into another system or to import the information into another system. XML is very versatile. Now, this basically is web programming language. It's basically HTML, CSS, and XML. Now, if you want to customize these and you're not sure how, or you don't want to mess around with this or learn this, if you have a web person where you work, any web person will probably be able to take a look at this and make some pretty simple modifications, or at least take a look at the right resources and make edits as needed. But let's look at how simple some of this can be to edit. So that BCSS format.xsl is what controls what gets displayed and how it gets displayed. Let's open that up with our text editor. Now, we did our best to notate these on the inside the best that we can. In here, you'll see all these green lines. This is why I actually like this editor, the Notepad Plus, because it does syntax highlighting, kind of similar to our G-code editor, but this does it for these XML files and HTML files. I'll go ahead and put a link up on the YouTube video for everybody to download this if they're interested. It's a free application. So just like it says here, this template defines the overall format of the setup sheet, and then it's broken into sections: the output logo and header info, the output program data, the output stock data, which is what we're going to take a look at actually removing, and then output the tools in separate tables and output the operation for each data, for each operation. So if we look at our setup sheet, let's go back up a level. We can see here, just like listed out, we have our logo and header info, then our program data, our stock data, and our tools, and then the operation data. So let's scroll through this file a little bit. Now, the title, setup sheet 4, and then the file name. Notice up here that in the web browser there's a title. Let's make a real quick change. Let's say setup sheet test. And we'll just save this out. And then we'll reload or refresh this. Notice that the update occurred, setup sheet test. So any bit of this can be edited. There are some rules to it though. Here we could see all of the XML callouts are titled as XSL value of select. And what this is doing is this is selecting information from the XML file. So here we can see that it selects setup sheet, header data, and then the file name. So let's take a look at what this information is. In the XML file that's generated. Setup sheet, header data, file name. So if we come here, setup sheet, you'll see these are tabbed in header data and then file name. So this is where it's grabbing the bobcad1.bbcd from. So it's pretty much just a map as to which item in this list to show. Now there's some more fancy things in here besides calling one line at a time. We can do loop statements and items like that to display a whole chunk of data or display data recursively. So first, let's take and get rid of this stock data. So let's come down, machine data, job table. Here's the stock information. Okay, so that's the end of it right here. And let's just cut this out of the XSL or the template and then do a save. Now when we come back and reload, you're going to notice there are stock data. This is actually good. I cut away a little bit much. This is something that you're going to see if the web browser can't parse the file that you had just edited. So in other words, I made a mistake. This is why you want to make a copy of the template and always have something to go back to. Or in this case, I'll just undo and take a better look at what I did. Let me save this again and then reload the template. There we go. Let's look at our stock information. So right here, it creates a title called stock data, and this is a table. So it's actually the table that we want to get rid of. And you'll see it, that table's now gone. Now, there's a lot of information in here, or a lot of language information. Now, these are things that you may know already or may not know already. I'm going to show you a resource right now for finding out how to find out what all these little callouts like table and column width do, and the table returns, and what this layout is. Actually, let me do this. Let me come here in my browser. This is a very good resource for finding out more information about the languages that are used. I'll put a link in the video that's up on YouTube, again, for resources to look at. But you could see here is learn HTML, CSS. So a lot of these items are HTML and also XML. So these resources give you what all these tags do, or what all these callouts do. XSLT, you kind of think of this like the manual. And there's information and try it yourself references, and also individual command references. So this is actually what we used ourselves when we need to know something about these files. It's standard language. This is something that mainly web people deal with, but if you're into that, or you have a guy there that is, and you want to customize the file, there's a lot that you can do with this. But this is an excellent resource if you need some help with the language. Now, if you have a basic understanding of HTML, it's really not too hard. So in here, let's go ahead and put that data back. I'll just undo and save. And we'll go back in our browser. Launch that setup sheet again. There we go. So we have our stock data back. Let's take a look at the image. One of the things right off the bat that everybody may want to change is they may want to put their company logo on top. This is something really simple to do, and this is something that everyone may want to do, just so that things are branded and styled to how your company works, or you may want to add some notes or some information, or maybe even your name as the programmer whose computer it came off of. But let's go ahead and do this. Let's go back to our text editor. We're editing the XSL, or the template file for the XML. And let's go ahead and find that image. In here we can see there's a class called logo, and there's an image script that goes to the same folder into images, BobCAD.png. So this file is looking for this image. So let's look at our folders again and see where that image resides. So in the templates folder, in the template that you create, in our case BobCAD setup, there's an images folder. If we go inside of here, we could see there's our BobCAD.png. So any image that you want to use, let's say we want to use this one here, the one with the darker blue and the different cat logo. This one's BL1.png. So let's just grab that name. And we'll come back to our text file. And instead of looking for BobCAD.png, let's change this to look inside of the same directory, but look for the BL1.png file. So we'll save this, come back and reload our setup sheet. And we can see that the logo's been updated. So things like the logo are pretty simple to update. Now, there is some information here that's recursive. If we look at the file, there's a for each statement. For each tool, generate one of these tables with the information. This is how it knows how to create a table for each and every tool versus putting them all into one table or just not outputting them at all. So any information that's in that XML is completely accessible. Let's look at the tooling information. If we just scroll down, get rid of the test. An easy thing, I know that I'm looking for tool, so I'm just going to do a find. Control F, tool. There we go. So if you have an idea of what you're looking for, sometimes find will make it a little bit easier to find what you're looking for. This is a large file. Here it is. Create tool data tables from tool list. So let's look at what this does. This creates template, matches tool list. For each select tool, it creates a table. Here's our size of the table and all the items that get output. The tool number, the tool's label, the data label, the type of tool, the tool's width, the diameters. So basically what this is doing is for each. So it's saying for every tool in this XML file, list out this data about it. So let's do this. Let's look at this XML. So in specific, we're looking for each select tool. So I know in this XML that there's an item called tool. So here's the tool. So this tool list, you'll see it, there's a parent item called tool inside tool list, and then all the data, and you can tell by the indents. And then we end the tool. You'll see the little / means end, and we start the next tool. And then we end the tool, then we end the tool list. So what that's saying is for each tool, grab all of this data, the tool number, the type ID, the type, the tool label, the holder label, and display it. So information on those commands to be used can be found on that W3 Schools that I just showed you, which I'll link up onto this video. But basically, this is just HTML. Some of the other items, just so you have an idea of what else or where else some data is coming from, this also calls out something that sets up the colors and the fonts and the size of the text that's used, and that's the CSS file, or cascading style sheet. Here we'll see it. There's actually in the top of this XSL file, there's a call out for it. The style sheet is the bcss style.css. These files can have any name that you give them as long as they're called out properly. But let's just take a peek at that just to kind of know that it's there. So if we come back to our folder, inside of our BobCAD setup folder, there's also a style sheet folder. That's where we found our XSL file. But there's also a CSS file. Again, you just want to open this up with a text editor. Go to edit. Now, what this does is this sets up the fonts, the colors that are used, the backgrounds, the borders, the spacing, the padding around text, and this is just standard web language. Any current web designer is able to do this, so if you have a web person there, they should know how to do this very comfortably. But in here, we can see that there's some different callouts for our images, for our heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, and we have our font size. And our body, our font size is 12 pixels. Let's say we want the font a little bit bigger on this setup sheet. Let's go ahead and bring up that setup sheet again. So let's say in the body, our font's not tall enough. We can't read it good. So maybe what we'll do is come in and our heading 1, or our first headings, let's go ahead and make the font size 3 EM and then refresh. Some of these changes do require that you clear your internet history to see or delete the cache. Now, because I'm hosting a web meeting, I'm not going to clear my web history for fear that that may disconnect us. But just know, standard CSS sheets, all the information on the spacing, the colors, the backgrounds. Perhaps we could change the body background. Here, the body color, let's change this. Now, some of these colors, you could use names like blue, red, green, and then you can also use hexadecimal colors or CSS colors, which is being used here. You can find all this information on that W3 schools. Yeah, see how the color just changed of all the text to white, which is what I said here, which is the FFF. 6 zeros is black. And then we can refresh this. But you get the idea. You can see that these items can be changed or customized through editing these files. So in here, there's really, just to kind of recap, what you want to do if you want to customize these setup sheets, just go ahead, go to your BobCAD-CAM data folder, version 26, go to your setup sheets, then templates. Now, you really don't have to worry. If you're afraid of breaking anything, it's not a problem. If you just make a copy of the original template file, you can change that as much as you want. If it stops working or you make a mistake or an error, just copy that original template file again. No big deal. Whatever templates or whatever names, folders are listed in here is what's available inside BobCAD-CAM as a template. Let's take a look at some of the other templates that are in here. When we go to Generate Setup Sheet, let's take a look at the Simple Tool List. just so you could have an idea of how these lists can vary. We'll click OK. You can see that this is plain, or plain as can be, just the black and white job setup information tool list, no other additional data. So again, we could see that that's controlled by just a few things. Our XML file is the actual data that's generated every time that you generate a setup sheet. This is made by BobCAD. And then you have your template files, or the XSL file and the CSS. For the most part, for everything that displays, it's that XSL file that gets used and edited to customize. Now, the XML file, if you have other software that uses or can import XML, or you want to import your tool list as XML, you can do that. I do believe that even Microsoft Office has some options for working with XML and importing them into spreadsheets. So it's a very flexible file format where you can move it around or move it into other software or customize it, display it in a database, integrate it into your ERP system. It's really up to you what you do with that. But easily customized. If you just want to change the logo, just go in, find the logo in your XSL file, and give it the name and path to the new logo. And then you can change the logo that's displayed. So that covers setup sheets and how to customize them, as well as how to generate them. I'll put a couple links up for you, which would be the PDF printer, the W3 Schools, which is w3schools.com. That's where you can find more information on the HTML XLS files. And also, I'll put up some links as well, and maybe if anybody gets up on our forums or makes any customizations, I'm sure that everyone would love to share. So if you want to post a folder up on our forum at bobcad.com, or make your customizations and share them with others, feel free. Okay, now as long as if no one has any questions, I'm going to wrap this up. So if you're logged in through Google, you should be able to ask any questions. The other thing that you can do is, if you have any questions that you want me to come back and answer, if you post a comment up on this video, we'll go ahead and get that answered for you. Just want to make this available to everyone to have a good idea what you can do and kind of the direction that you need to go to set up these custom files. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this up, and feel free to post here any questions that you have. We'll make sure to get back to you. Thank you.